Today's reading is from Joshua chapter 24, verses 14 through 15. Now fear the Lord and serve him with all faithfulness. Throw away the gods your ancestors worshipped beyond the Euphrates River and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve, whether the gods of your ancestors served beyond the Euphrates or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord.
Thank you. As for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. You know, we just had a little celebration this weekend, the Independence Day. And a lot of people, you know, what we celebrate is our freedom when we celebrate Independence Day, right? I mean, that's the thing that really means the most to us, is what we fought for. It's what our patriotism lies, and it's what we're grateful for in this country, is that we have a freedom that a lot of people don't. You know, some of the things that we take for granted are things that it steals their peace each and every day in other countries. You know, there was recently a woman that was persecuted for being a Christian. She was arrested for it, and she was sentenced to death for it. And even when they released her, they arrested her again on a different charge, and things are a mess there. Several people every day are imprisoned or killed because of their faith. What we do here every Sunday, some people die for. And so I think when we celebrate our freedom, we should always keep that in mind, shouldn't we? You know, what is our freedom, though, other than that? How is your freedom defined? When you say, I'm fighting for freedom, or you say, you know, America is the land of the free, what freedom is it that you are thinking of at the time? Religious freedom, we picked one of those. Are there other kinds of freedom? Is there freedom to do and be what you want? Is there freedom to live a life that you choose, as long as it doesn't cause somebody harm? We have our freedom to choose a career that we feel passionate about. We have a freedom to have as big a family, as small a family as we want, as long as we take care of them. But sometimes those freedom, you know, there's different rules with our freedom. Correct? There's laws that protect our freedom. There's laws in our land that say that you can't do this to another person, that you can't hurt another person, because that takes away their freedom. So our freedom exists as long as we celebrate our freedom together. And that's what is great about our country, is that we do give other people the right to have their freedom. But just like in our own lives, in America, that can also be kind of an uncomfortable situation, right? I mean, sometimes we don't really want to give other people the freedom that they choose, because it kind of bugs us, you know? And that's kind of where we're at in our world. Our freedom, you know, we work very, very hard. Is our freedom our happiness? Or are those two separate things? Sometimes we celebrate our freedom, and we know that that's something that we can achieve, that's something that we can work for, that's something that we have the right to do what we want to do. I'm not sure if any other country says that as individuals, that we have the right. You're taking away my rights. I have the right to do this. I have the right to pursue this. I have the right to say this. I have the right to disagree with you. I have the right to fight you on this. I have the right to protest you when say that what you are doing is wrong. I have the right to assemble and say that I don't care for this. I have the right to even write my president and say, I don't like what you're doing. That is freedom. But is it happiness? See, there's something that we have, I don't want to say lost our way, but I think that we sometimes forget what true freedom is. Because true freedom, everybody has a chance of having. no matter what country they're in. What true freedom is nothing of what I mentioned. True freedom is something that we've learned from the woman that is being persecuted for her faith. True freedom is something that we learned from slavery, from places where people have been persecuted and oppressed. True freedom is someplace in a third world country where they have basically not even a church to meet in. Those are true freedoms. Why is that true freedom? Why is that the source of their happiness? Sometimes we define freedom here by our careers. How many times when you meet somebody is your first thing that you ask, what do you do? What do you do for a living? That kind of is in a place where that really defines us, right? We never say, oh, it's good to meet you. What's your blood type? Or what'd you eat for dinner this morning? We ask, what do you do for a living? Where do you live? What do you do there? What do you do for 8 hours a day? And sometimes that defines how we kind of even treat that person, Are you doing something to where you can have dinner with me, or are you doing something to where you're actually going to be serving the dinner or cleaning my dinner up? And our freedom and happiness is sometimes we run into that. There's many times when I will be in a place where I'm joking around with somebody, and they'll say, what do you do? And I'll say, I'm a pastor. And they'll go, oh, well, that's great, So what are you doing tonight? Oh, we were going to go to the bar, but not now. We were thinking about church. We were going to pray, I think, is what we're going to do, As they shove the Schlitz under the counter, I think the party last night at the wedding got happier after I left, is what happened there. More people say goodbye to you than they say hello. So a lot of times you get into those circumstances where you're defined by that. Your freedom defines you, but it's not the source of your happiness. Sometimes we define our freedom and our happiness, and we try to group them into our success and our stuff. Sometimes you look at your neighbor's car and you think, I really want a car like that. Why does he deserve a car like that? He doesn't deserve a car like that. I deserve a car like that. And sometimes you get a new car or something like that, and you kind of feel like, I've earned this. This is because I, do things and I get a car. And sometimes we do deserve things like this. Summer's hard because people keep their windows open and you drive down the street and you see how many people have a bigger TV than you. And from the street it's clearer than yours. And you think, I wonder if that window's going to be open all night long or not, and if they'll hear me take their television. But you try to get things for that. You go home at night, you look at that big screen TV and you think, that's happiness, depending on what's on, For me, during football season, I'm a Bears fan, so there's very seldomly happiness when I'm watching the football games, especially when they play Green Bay. But sometimes it's in the clothes that we wear, Sometimes it's in our really fashionable shoes that we put on. That is our key to happiness. By the way, these are killing my feet. But I'm happy because they're styling, right? Sometimes it's in our things, I'm not going to judge women, but I'm just going to ask without looking, how many have your original hair color? I'm not going to look. And not that I'm a purist, but this is my original hair color, just so you know. But sometimes we find happiness in that. In making ourselves where we look at ourselves in the mirror and we say, I like what I see. Sometimes we seek happiness. You see, one of the problems with that is that our happiness still is just out of reach. You know, we get the TV, but it's not, geez, I just got that LCD TV, and now they just came out with the new, Giga thing TV that's supposed to have the star come out and actually shake your hand before each show, and you get the shoes, and you think, oh, someone else has shoes like that, or you get the hair, and you think, oh, I look like everybody else. That's not my happiness, I want more. And so we're always kind of reaching out for I need more. And so you go to work, and you work more, and you save more, and you buy more, or you take another loan out. And you're still thinking that you're not as happy as when you look at somebody else that looks even more happy. You see, we put on a good face, don't we? Our behavior face is pretty good. We smile and everything, and sometimes we look really happy. And sometimes we look at other people and we think, why are they so happy? I hate that. You ever have those people that are so happy and no matter what is going on, Oh, Hurricane Katrina, that's a shame. But look, we can have more people at our house. They look at the positive of everything and you just want to smack them, right? That happy song, Pharrell Williams or whatever his name is, singing the happy song, happy, da-da-da, happy, about 2 songs of that, and you want to smack him in the face, right? Maybe not. But see, the problem is that we compare our happiness with other people, and that's the problem. But why, when I first came out here, did I say that people in third world countries, people that are persecuted, they know what happiness is? People that have none of what I mentioned, why did I say that they know what happiness is? That sounds a little stupid, doesn't it? Because see, true happiness and true freedom, it doesn't come from anything that the earth can provide. It doesn't come from that. As much as our country tries, it can never achieve complete freedom and complete happiness. As much faith as we put into our political leaders, they cannot satisfy us in a pure way. And that causes a rift in our lives. Because we're not getting happiness out of these things, and so everything that we have is what we call temporary happiness. It kind of provides us until the next bad thing comes along. And then we seek something else. It happens in politics all the time. It doesn't matter what party you are on. If you're a diehard, you just hate whatever the other party's doing. And why do we do that? What's the main blocker of our happiness? What's the main thing that stops our happiness? Fear. Fear of losing that happiness. Fear of losing it all. Because you see, when you put your faith into something that is only on this earth, that is only temporary, you know that the end of that happiness is going to happen. The color in the hair is going to fade. The shoes are going to wear out. The car is going to be out of date. I don't see anybody, driving a Yugo anymore. Remember Yugos? Never mind. Happiness fades. The things that we put our happiness into. When we go to politics, our happiness fades every 4 years if we're a certain party. Or whether they do the other party, or whether the Congress has more of these people or more of these people, and who happens to be speaking, and whatever the news is telling us, it can really balance our happiness, and it can also balance our fear. We live in a time where even in our government, if you are on one party, you are scared to death of what the other party is doing. Because you're so scared they're going to take your happiness away. You're scared that they're going to take your freedom because you're putting your faith into flawed people. You see, that's why we read from Joshua, because he said, no matter what happens, if you guys, it's time to pick your gods now. Is it going to be this temporary stuff? Is it going to be a person? Is it going to be idolatry? But as for me and my house, we serve the Lord. He knew what happiness was. And the people that are in the third world country, the woman that is being persecuted right now for her faith, she could have walked free if she just would have said she's not a Christian. And she took a stand and said, as for me and my house, I serve the Lord. No matter what they could do to her, no matter what kind of persecution they could do to her, no matter how she had her baby in a prison. And she knew happiness. And she knew freedom. A freedom that no country, no politics, no thing can touch. Because what she felt was her eternity. When we have problems in our lives, when we buy and accumulate a lot of stuff in a nice house, you know what's one thing that's sad? A lot of people remember when houses were smaller, right? When people would actually eat in the same room. And they would converge in one living space. Now, I was talking, to a realtor actually just the other day, and she was saying that most people want two living spaces, two different living spaces. We're trying to get more space. We're trying to get further away from people. We're trying to isolate ourselves more. Now it's getting to the point where our happiness is defined by our own privacy. We want more, we communicate more, by texting, by Facebook, by means that allow us to talk to somebody without even looking at them, face to face. We were talking about just yesterday about all this alumni stuff going on, and how some people, why would you even come into town when you can look them up on Facebook? Because really, all you want to know is how fat they got, right? And so you can check that out on Facebook and social media without even having to talk to them, and realize why you haven't talked to them in, all those years. Our happiness is being defined by very selfish means. We want more space. We want more stuff to put our space in. We want the government to do what we feel is right. We want our neighbors further away. But even when they're further away, we still want them to live the way that we want them to live. Because we fear that somebody is going to take away our freedom. The more that we put our faith into those things, the more fences we are building and barricading ourselves into our own yard. And no matter how much space we acquire, how much stuff we acquire, our soul, our very source of true happiness, is getting smaller and smaller and smaller because we're pushing more people out. See, Christ said that there was 2 rules. Love God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. But our happiness has not been defined by our neighbors anymore. Our happiness is actually being defined by the small cave that we even call it a man cave, right? The more that we can build, the more that we can barricade, the more that we can isolate ourselves. And we wonder why, after we get that stuff, the stuff that we achieved and fought for and worked hard, we wonder why we're not happy again. And why our neighbor still looks happier than us. There's something that, when it talks about freedom, I want to read you something from Galatians 5. It's one of Paul's letters. There you go, right there, hometown of Paul. He's writing to the Galatians. You see, the Galatians were caught up into what the happiness was when they were just becoming Christians. There was a lot of Christian sects that the Jews were saying, you have to be circumcised and you have to live like a Jew in order to follow our faith. You see, they were defining their happiness not by their faith, but by their actions. Sound familiar? That's pretty much what we do right now. And Paul writes differently. He said, "Behold, I, Paul, say to you, if you receive circumcision, Christ will not benefit to you. And I testify again to every man who receives circumcision that he is under obligation to keep the whole law. He's saying that you're focusing on the law, but not on your faith. It was for freedom that Christ set us free. Therefore, keep standing firm and do not be subject again to a yoke of slavery. When we are searching for happiness in things of the earth, we become slaves to those things in the earth, because we keep working to try to achieve more of that. When we achieve happiness by our faith, that is the only time in our lives that we are truly free. Because you see, the cost for our freedom in faith is nothing. And it lasts longer. Christ's hair never fades. It lasts. So you have a freedom no matter who you are or what you've done. You know, I've been watching some of these the televangelist guys, and everyone's got a book out, and everyone's doing this, there's 10 steps to happiness, and there's 10 steps to this, you know, and basically you open it up and it says, you know, if you pray hard enough, you get a good parking spot, and that's happiness. What? That's stupid, you know? And so I couldn't do 10 steps, I got 7 steps, all right? 7 steps to what I call pure happiness, okay? The first one is to put God in a part of your life that he hasn't been in before. That's a challenge. You see, a lot of us, we carry God with us, but sometimes we leave him out. Sometimes we get caught up in our work, and God's not our focus. Sometimes we get caught up in our family or our stress, and sometimes God's not our focus there. Sometimes we want to do things that we really don't want God to see. So the challenge is to bring God with you before you make that step, when you go to work, whatever, where he's not present usually in your lives, bring God with you. The second, see the world through God's priority list. Look at the things in your life that you see as very, very important and ask yourself, does God feel the same way? The things that you're working for, the vacation, the car, the stuff. Does God see that maybe what you're doing is putting some things in front of God? And is God your priority? Now, remember, I'm not saying that stuff is bad. I will never say that. I will not say that family time is bad. I will never, ever say that. When it becomes bad is when you're putting something in front of God. That becomes idolatry. Idolatry can even be a relationship. It can even be a family. If you're putting your family before God, if you put your country before God, that's idolatry. Because God is the strength that builds on everything else. When you put God as your priority, it helps your family. It helps all of that. It's like putting your stuff before food. You need food to survive. You have to think of God the same way. Put God as your priority and think of the things that are more important to God and try to emulate that. Seek the hidden blessings. Every day, if you pray, a lot of times we thank God for the blessings, and they're usually the obvious ones. But every one of us, we have hundreds of blessings every day. And most of them we overlook. Most of them go right past us without us even noticing them, because most of them are the small things. Sometimes we see the building and we forget to look at each individual brick that made that building. Look at those blessings that built your day, because those are going to find you strength. Those little things, when you focus on those, then your happiness isn't focused on such big things. It's focused on the things that sustain you. Put God in your car. When you're driving, that's a lot of time for us. For many of us, that's our alone time. Grab Christian music. Pray, get a book on tape, but put God where you are in that car. And those moments where you're trying to think about work or things like that, or if anyone's going to see me when I drive through McDonald's, Put God there and prioritize that in your life. Pray for your loved ones. You know, this is an obvious one, but it's one that sometimes we forget to do. Sometimes we actually forget to pray for our family and our friends and the people that we care about. We forget to do that sometimes. We take that for granted. We take them for granted that they're a blessing in our lives. And sometimes that's the blessing that we overlook. Pray for your family and your friends. And number 6 is pray for your enemies. The person that has done you wrong. It doesn't mean to welcome them in. There are people in this world that have been abused and they have been hurt, and they can never fully give a person the right to come into their life again. But we can pray for them. We can pray for the people that have hurt our country. You ever pray for a terrorist? I tell you, when God told the story about the Good Samaritan, that's exactly what he was talking about. A political enemy. Our job as Christians are to pray for everybody, good or bad, because what we're praying for is not their actions. What we're praying for is everybody's salvation. That means people that live a life that we don't agree with, too. Every single person is someone that we should be praying for, because it's for forever. And make every meal a communion meal. When you get together with your family and your friends, when you gather for a meal, even if it's by yourself, know that this is the meal. You see, it was a regular meal that Christ had. It was a Passover meal. It was just a meal that Christ used as an example and said, "This is my blood that I shed for you." And this over here, this is the bread, but it's my body that I break for you. Every time that we eat, if we were to do that and remember that God gave his life for us, then we find happiness and freedom in every situation that we're in. I invite you guys now to come up and join me as we celebrate communion, and we celebrate what true happiness is by going to the very source. It's not in the stuff, it's not in the plates or anything, it's not even in the food itself. It's in the reassurance and the reminder that God loves you regardless of who you are, what you've done, or what you are doing, or what you will do. I've said this before, I'll say it a million times. When Jesus first shared this meal, sitting at the same table was Judas, the one that betrayed him. He not only shared the meal with him, he washed his feet. Because God serves even the enemy. You see, God sees things differently than we do. It's not by the priority of what we see here on earth. When we seek happiness here, we run into a roadblock every time. When we seek happiness here, we know what salvation feels like. And even through the roughest times, we have happiness because we have freedom. Freedom of our souls.